So the story of her conversion is in here. And if it's not a bad time to listen, I'll go ahead and read most of the chapter. I'll hit the high points because it's an entire chapter. If you're ready, let's roll. So she's in South Dakota at Dakota Wesleyan Church, or college, I apologize. And her and her roommate, Sarah, are kicking it on a Saturday. And that's where we'll pick up. Saturday afternoons were especially fun. Sarah and I usually had people over, and we would sit for hours listening to music while we gossiped. It was on such an afternoon that we were interrupted by uninvited guests. I heard a knock and went to look out through a small shade that covered a window on the door. I was surprised to see 2 Mormon missionaries standing outside our door. Anyone who has lived on an Indian reservation knows that, in general, the only people who walk around in suits and ties are the Mormon missionaries. I told everyone there were 2 Mormons at our door. My look of disbelief brought my friends to the window also. We stared out at the missionaries, and then we began to laugh. Sarah did not like whites, and after hearing what the Mormons taught about blacks, she felt even less friendly towards Mormons. We all looked out again and laughed, repeating this action about 6 or 7 times. The last time, as we looked out, the missionaries were staring at each other, trying to see if one of them possibly had something on backwards. Finally, I decided to take the opportunity to let the Mormons know how I felt about them. Opening the door, I invited them in. Once they were inside, I immediately started swearing at them for teachings about my race. The missionaries stood looking confused and afraid, yet they did not offer a word of defense. Seeing that I wasn't going to get an argument out of them, I told them I would give them 5 minutes to explain, and then their explanation better be a good one. I never thought that 5 minutes would extend to half an hour. When I realized that they had my attention with their explanation, I became uneasy. I had never intended to listen to them. Quickly, I told them to get out because they had overstayed their 5-minute limit. They apologized for staying so long. They left us an invitation to attend church on Sunday. I'll never attend your stinking church, I screamed as I slammed the door behind him. Neither Sarah nor I attended church. Our Sundays were planned out in advance. We slept until noon, ate lunch, slept again until 7 in the evening, watched Kojak, and then went back to bed on Monday morning. Or until Monday morning, I'm sorry. On Sunday, following the visit of the 2 missionaries, I woke up early. I was puzzled as to why I had wakened so early. I could tell from the constant movement of Sarah's bed that she was awake also. We finally decided to fix breakfast, something we rarely did, especially not on Sundays. Even after stuffing ourselves with big breakfast, we could not go back to sleep. Finally, I said, Sarah, let's go. I didn't say where, but she immediately agreed and began dressing for church. We arrived at the small Mormon chapel and were greeted by 2 missionaries who had visited us the day before. They were all smiles. Because of the constant mentioning of Jesus Christ, I was quickly turned off by the meeting. Sarah soon asked if I felt we had had enough of hearing about God, and I told her yes. We then got up and walked out, noticing the disappointed look on the faces of the missionaries. We discovered that going to the Mormon church that Sunday had been a mistake. It became impossible to get rid of these 2 missionaries. In the weeks and months that followed, they wanted to share a message with us, but we didn't want to listen. Day after day, they returned with their message, and day after day, we told them in no uncertain terms to get lost. When language finally failed to discourage them, we reverted to physical abuse. One day, we called them on the phone and told them we were ready to listen and to come over early enough to have dinner. We then boiled some water, and when they arrived, we opened the door and announced that dinner was over. But they might as well drink up. We threw the water on them, closed the door, and laughed. They still kept coming back. At the time the missionaries were at the breaking point trying to teach me, completely discouraged, they called the mission president to ask his advice. They told him about the black girl to whom they had strongly felt they were to teach the gospel, but who refused to let them. The mission president asked him if there was a romantic interest. One of them briefly explained to the president some of the things I had done to them and then said, "Now tell me, President, could there possibly be a romantic interest?" The president reminded them of the church's policy and told them not to go back anymore. But early in the next morning, shortly after 7 o'clock, he called them back and said, "Elders, I don't know why, but keep trying to reach her." Months passed. and the missionaries got nowhere in their efforts to teach me the gospel. One day, as they stood knocking, I opened the door to once again make threats on their lives. But of all the many times they had stood before me, I had never seen what I saw then. I saw love on those two faces. The words I'd planned to say somehow came out this way. Either you guys are crazy or I am. So come on in so I can be sure it's not me. At first, accepting the things they taught was hopeless because of the pictures they used. They showed me pictures of Joseph Smith and said he was a prophet for these latter days, just like the prophets of the Bible. I didn't care about the Bible and its prophets, nor did I care about whether God had called a prophet to the earth in my lifetime. My suspicions that God was white and cared only about the white man were confirmed when I saw that God called a white man to be the prophet. The missionaries showed me a picture of 12 apostles, and they too were white. At this point, I told them to get out and go teach their white racist ideas to someone else, because I didn't care to know about what white folk had been chosen to do this or that for their God. Bitterness welled up within me. Everything that was good or highly regarded always seemed to have a white man behind it. The next day, the missionaries returned and asked if they could please share their message with me, this time without showing me any pictures. So I told them, "You two are as bad as my mama. She never gives up either." We began to progress. Little by little, I recognized feelings that were unusual for me, and little by little, I became afraid. I tried to suppress these feelings with negative thoughts about Mormons and whites, but the feelings inside just wouldn't go away. I tried to define what they were, but couldn't. All I knew was that my strong hatred of and bitterness against the Mormons were disintegrating. I finally called Mama one night to talk about these feelings that I could not understand. When I heard her voice, all I could do was cry. Mama must have thought something serious had happened because she immediately put my brother Charles on the phone. I told him that I thought I was beginning to believe in a God. My brother was quiet as I sobbed heavily. After a few moments of listening to me cry, he yelled to Mama to come to the phone. I heard him explain he thought I was losing my marbles and I'd better come back home. I tried once again to tell Mama what I had told Charles, and as I did, she started crying. "Child, the good Lord moves in mysterious ways. Your mama been praying real hard for yous and is so happy that yous found the Lord." I explained to Mama that the God I was talking about was the Mormon God. "God is God of all of us. Just be happy yous believe in him," she said. Mama also tried to explain that strange feeling I was worried about was the love of God. But this I denied. I told her I didn't want any feelings of love for God. I could tell this hurt her, and later I felt bad, but I was being truthful. Later, Mama told my brothers that the Mormons had been talking to me about God. That night, my brother Roy called me back. "Stay away from him," he told me sternly. "Who?" I asked. Cold lump of fear knotted in my heart. I knew he was going to say the Mormons. Those no-good Mormons who will go around teaching you that you are lower than the animals of this earth. That's who. I tried explaining, but he refused to listen. More of my brothers got on the phone and in general gave me the same advice. Mormons were no good, and in their book never would be. Sarah, too, began to allow the missionary's message into her life. At first, we made jokes about their message, but gradually the jokes became fewer and fewer until we almost entirely stopped talking about the Mormons. We each were wrestling with new and unidentified feelings, feeling we just couldn't joke about. The weeks that followed were nightmares. I had decided not to return to college that fall. I couldn't find contentment in anything. No matter how late I stayed up at night, sleep would not come. Food was tasteless. Music lost its appeal. Nothing seemed right. I finally refused to see the missionaries, thinking that frustration would go away, but that didn't work either. I felt downright miserable. This feeling was worse than the persecution I had experienced during my childhood. Then I had recognized the feelings as hatred, but now I didn't know what they were, and it was frightening. I began to take long drives to secluded places on the reservation in hope of escaping. Escaping what? I didn't know. Sometimes I sat and cried. Other times I stared into the space for hours. When I couldn't do either, I sat and talked out loud to myself and my family. I tried to relive some of my good times when we were all at home together. Praying occurred to me often, but I refused to pray. And there's still a lot more to go. I'll pick up in a part 2.